Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Inside Lowell podcast. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming to you from the WellPoint Studios here in downtown Lowell. Unicare is now WellPoint. New name, same commitment to its members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. And we want to thank our friends at WellPoint for making this podcast possible. I want to thank all of our Inside Lowell podcast sponsors. Of course, our friends at the Washington Savings Bank. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, from affordable to luxurious, apartments for all. Boston North Company, business solutions for restaurant and retail. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection since 1925. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on for over 41 years. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Tsongas Center in downtown Lowell. And with that, I want to welcome in my special guest for this morning's podcast. We're recording this literally on a Wednesday morning. It feels like I'm going back to my radio days here, Kim.
Except that I had to do my hair to come on here.
You did, because we have cameras
like
now.
the radio a little bit better.
Yeah, you're lying. Like, you didn't do your hair for me. You did it for your job that you have to go into.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming in early in the morning to do this, because I have to go take my kid to a basketball camp as well afterwards.
Nice.
So it worked out perfectly.
I'm impressed that you do all of that without reading a script.
Oh, no, there's a script right there. I can't. I have
but you
to. I
weren't
have
even
to
looking
peek
at
down
it.
every now and then. I have to peek
Yeah,
down.
do
You
you?
you learn the tricks of the
That's pretty
trade
impressive, though.
from those years of TV. Thank you. So, interesting meeting last night, to say the least. It looked kind of innocuous if you looked at the agenda. I mean, there was about a dozen union contracts that had been agreed to. There was peace, there was love, there was harmony.
There was actually a lot on the agenda. Maybe it wasn't the highlight of what is going to be discussed, but there was a lot on it. So the union contracts were settled. There was auditors' letters. There was the waste increases. I mean, there was a lot on there, but.
There were, and then what all of us were kind of looking to see, are there going to be any fireworks on the couple of ethics motions? I personally thought, you know what, this is one of these, it'll be brought up, it'll be a quick discussion, and then it'll just kind of go away. And then all of a sudden, your colleague, John Dakota, zooming into the meeting, kind of came off the top rope, and he and Corey Robinson ended up going at it over how many motions are filed, and then the accusations, the charges that Councilor Robinson is facing were brought up, and then all of a sudden you spoke up, and you basically said you were not going to be voting for the motion, which would be to have the solicitor or somebody give you a guideline of what councilors can and can't accept as jobs or other employees, except you threw an interesting little phrase in there. And I want to give you a chance to explain it. You said, I'm not going to be bullied into voting for this motion.
That's right.
That's right. You hadn't been I didn't think you were bullied, other than the motion and the explanation for why it was filed.
Well, my feeling, it spilled over a bit off the floor, right? So, which probably shouldn't have happened. But, my feeling was that if you have an issue, then you reach out to the Ethics Commission. That's their job. They're an independent board. That's the only one that can make the decision whether or not you're allowed to accept your pay, whether or not you're allowed to take a job. That's who you reach out to, and that's the body that we have. So that was it. So, there was the exchange between Councilor Dakota, Councilor Robinson, and I just said to Councilor Robinson, the Ethics Commission is the one that decides. He said, go ahead and say that, and I'm going to just make you look bad. I'm going to make you look bad. And he just kept saying it. And it was just kind of like, you know what? Like, let's just stick to the discussion here.
So I don't mean to interrupt, but that wasn't during the meeting, or was it before the meeting, or when?
It was during the meeting.
That part I
wasn't on the radio.
Okay, I had just finished mowing the lawn,
right.
So
No, you wouldn't have heard it. I mean, they focus on one person's microphone,
okay.
Right? I mean, the microphones aren't on, but he just kept saying, "I'm going to make you look bad," and I was kind of, "What are you talking about?"
You sit next to each other, for those who aren't familiar with the council seating arrangement.
Yeah.
So he was trying to get you to not vote
that's how I
against his
felt.
motion, or
I
to
kind
not
of felt like
speak
not to
on it?
speak on it. I felt like he was trying to kind of silence that, saying, go ahead, almost daring me, go ahead, say it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how I feel. I'm going to say that, and I was, and I don't know, possibly it was just because of the dialogue that had just happened. Everything had gotten heated, but I did feel like it was inappropriate. So, and I commented that way. And I did feel like the motion itself was pretty targeted at one counselor, which I also think is inappropriate.
Okay.
So.
Those of us who follow the council pretty regularly and are aware of some of the dynamics behind the scene have known that there's an undercurrent that's been going on for a while. To me, it kind of started shortly before the election, the selection of the mayor, kind of the behind the scenes maneuvering, I think, really escalated it. And then, of course, shortly thereafter, there were the charges against your colleague, Councilor Robinson there, and all hell kind of broke loose. But it seemed to have been tamped down until just recently, some social media posts. I noticed you again kind of jumping into a post about parks and ball fields condition, and I said, "Oh, there's
again." I felt like it was targeting,
there."
I felt like it was targeting an individual employee, which I think is completely inappropriate and actually opens the city up to liability, I believe. So, I just, we use social media. It's a great tool to get out to people. But I think you also, as a role as a counselor, you kind of have a duty. And I'm not saying to cover things up, not to be transparent. It's not about cronyism. I've seen that word posted online, right? These people aren't my friends outside the council. We're colleagues that are supposed to be respectful and work together for the good of the city. And I think some of this distracts from that. So,
are you guys able to work? Just from what I saw last night, I mean, I'm not sure, Councilor Dakota, whether that's something that's going to continue. I can't imagine it won't. I almost got the sense he was kind of throwing a high. I likened it to throwing a high and tight fastball to brush a batter back from a plate. My sports analogy there, but there's clearly some, I don't want to know, animosity. There's clearly some disconnect there on the part of some of the counselors. Can you guys work together can you function together as a cohesive unit?
No, I
still,
think so.
even with some of these personal differences?
I think you have to, again, because we all want the same thing. I would hope, so yeah, we're going to have to.
All right. And I will.
It's definitely that. I mean, I think there will be some more, I don't want to say checking of, excessive, the motions were brought up last night. I mean, Councilor Dakota is correct. It wasn't on the agenda item, specifically, but, if we all put 9 motions in, we're going to have, or 12 motions in, we wouldn't be able to do the work of the city. We already are overburdening the administration, I believe. So we're going to have to work together a little better on this.
Okay. And you and Councilor Robinson, alphabetically, the council is seated. Unless somebody's the mayor, you sit next to each other. Going to be fun in 2 weeks. Should we all be watching? Should we all kind of just show up at City Hall instead of, because the TV didn't pick up what you just said happened off the camera. No, but it was during the discussion.
I think we'll try to stop that dialogue. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, those of us in the media,
maybe.
I thought, what am I going to talk about with Councilor Scott on this morning?
She doesn't like to talk.
But dragging words out of you is really difficult. This is probably the most I've heard you speak, at least to me. I can
definitely speak
when you're fired up. Yes, I experienced that back when you were on the school committee at one point. All right, segue over to the parks conditions, because that has been a big thing on social media. A lot of people jumping in, and there's been a lot of posts showing photos of the field conditions, baseball field conditions, other parks conditions. And then you got into the comments section of one of them. It was, I guess I should let you kind of explain why you got in, but it felt like you were trying to defend the way the district system is working, while also you did kind of say, some of the fields in my district aren't great.
Well, I think the comment that was made was about district representation. Is it working? I think that was the comment that was made. That's the way I read it. I took it personal as a district rep. I spoke to the person that made the comment, assured me it wasn't directed at me, but it was directed at district representatives that, weren't doing enough or saying enough. So again, I find it kind of offensive to go on social media instead of saying something directly to your colleague, and letting them address whether or not it's a legitimate concern or not. The parks in my district absolutely need work. And I continuously drive through my district, photograph the parks, send them into the manager, send them into the assistant manager, and they're working on them. There's definitely a lot more work to be done. I'm not trying to make it, it wasn't about making excuses for the conditions. The councilors that bring that forward are absolutely appropriate to say that.
Okay, it seemed like you were a little bit defensive at the accusation that the district councilors aren't doing their job. Is that
Right.
kind of what you?
That's right.
And you say you do take pictures just like
Yeah,
other
just
councilors
like
do,
other councilors do, and
but you're not going to post them on your social media page.
correct.
Okay. Would you get more action if you did? I'm just
Possibly.
Is it effective? Is it
I-
working? It doesn't seem
Sending
to
them
be.
in works. I mean, I don't find that's what I'm saying to you. Sending them into Assistant Manager Machado. I mean, I've never had him not be responsive, so I'm not sure what the purpose is of. And I guess it's the public embarrassment. I don't know, but why would you do that when they're very responsive? So
Okay. Are the conditions at the parks? What's wrong? You've said there's an issue, even though you kind of took exception to the post. Yeah. Multiple councils are posting about it. It's a discussion that's being had out there, and a lot of people are chiming in with commentary as well on social media. What's the issue there? Does the city just have too many? Does the city have too many? Does it not have enough employees? Does it not have a good enough workforce that's just not doing the job properly?
Well, I don't know what to me, it seems like there's expectation that's not there of what a park should look like. And I will say, I live on a park, right in front of a park. And, under a former, commissioner, I mean, I have seen them look better. There were expectations for weeding, for raking, for, blowing the bark mulch, putting down bark mulch. So I think the expectation has to change. I don't know whether or not, I don't want to blame the employees because I don't know their job. I don't know whether or not the routes need to be changed, whether or not they have enough staff. I don't know that. That's something that the manager needs to look at.
Okay. Is part of the responsibility of the parks, let me kind of throw this out there because I've seen some folks say it, parents or these little league organizations or whatever organization is using the park does an awful lot of maintenance. I know when they had that big baseball tournament Memorial Day weekend over at Shed, and obviously the city's going to make Shed look great. Right. When there's a tournament coming in because of the name, whatever you want to call it. But I do remember back in the days, parents used to be responsible for going and mowing lawns and doing some of the cleanup so their kids could play there. So I do wonder how much of the better condition of the parks in a bygone era was not because of city employees, but because of the invested residents and neighborhood. Have we lost some of that?
Yeah, and I don't know that answer. And I don't want to, I'm not a baseball person. I'm not, I don't look at a field and say, oh, this is not level, this is not cut. And I don't know how much of that is any different than years past. I don't know if we're just, we have a counselor now, obviously, that's very astute about conditions of baseball fields. I don't know if he's just really noticing things that have always been that way. I don't know that. So
let me defend the city here, and I know I'm going to tick off Jack, and we'll do it tonight on the Pod Squad when we record that. But
I'm sure he'll be.
My son started playing instructional league baseball this past April, and I started noticing the condition of the Chelmsford fields. It was around the same time that all this started popping up on Lowell's fields on social media. No, you know what? I probably would have never noticed. I would have figured, there's a couple of fields there. But there's one set of fields in Chelmsford that are in the best condition of all of them, and that's right in Chelmsford Center, where they have visiting teams and out-of-town tournaments and stuff like that. Lowell teams go play there sometimes, and then there's a bunch of others that they use. One of them brand new. They just opened it up this year. And I looked around, there's grass growing on the infield. It's not mowed. A different field had like trees growing in the dugouts where my son was. And I took photos of it to have them, but not to point anything out, just to kind of say, well, is this just the reality of 21st century government in 2024? Now I want to go around to Tewksbury and Billerica and kind of look at their parks, say, well, what are their parks?
What are they
look
doing
like?
different? That's actually a good idea to do, I guess.
Is there
you
one
know?
set of fields, the most prominent one, that's better kept than others
And
that
if
are
their
less
staffing
used?
levels different, then, I mean, those are things you could look at, I guess, and, draw something from that, I guess.
Yeah,
But,
so maybe I just gave you a motion
Yeah,
idea
yeah,
for
yeah.
2 weeks.
well,
Chatting with Lowell City Councilor Kim Scott, contracts was another big discussion last night, and it looked like from what I'm told, all but one have been settled with the citywide employees. And then, of course, the granddaddy of them all, the teacher's contract, is still hanging out there, waiting to come in. But
they like to wait to the end. They like to be the last one to settle.
every contract had a 9% raise, 4 in year 1, 3 in year 2, 2 in year 9, in 2 in year 3, I apologize, to make it 9%. The most beneficial, if you're going to do it that way, for the employees, because they get the big money up front, or the bigger money, and then all their raises are based off that number. Do you think the contracts were fair? Were they fair both to the workers, the unions, and to the taxpayers?
I think so at this point in time. I mean, cost of living is through the roof. I mean, I don't think anyone right now is 3% cost of living increase is just, it's going to happen at this point. I think it's very much in line with what other towns and cities have been settling across the state. I think it was a good negotiation, I think. So
okay.
One in particular you want to talk about. Yeah,
there was one I want to talk about, but should we expect that last union will probably come in at the same number? And are the teachers coming in at 9% in some way, shape, or form over 3 years?
Well, I haven't been part of the negotiations this time around, right?
But the administration is, though, right? And you guys kind of direct the administration.
But I mean, I would assume that they're looking for more than 9% at this point in time. But
I'd be disappointed if Paul George's wasn't. But
I would like Paul George's to negotiate for me.
It certainly looks like the line has been set and where it's going. If I'm one of the other unions, and I've heard this from police, I've heard it from fire, I've heard it from other workers, they always agree. They say, we give concessions, we do this, we do that, and then the teachers come in and blow it all out of the water, and they
the
get
last
ticked
one
off.
to negotiate.
Yep.
They're usually the last one, and that's.
Is this the administration? Is this the school committee that holds the line and says, well, this is what we gave everybody else, this is what you're getting?
I don't know. Or do they just, I mean, it's a fair offer. Do they, agree with that, and then we settle? So
right. There was one interesting thing that you pointed to, that one of the contracts, again, I counted the number at some point and I forgot, but it was like a dozen union contracts. One of them didn't include time for bereavement for an employee that's been there less than a year. All the others had it. It was brought up by Councilor Gitchier, and the manager said, I think the manager said something effective, I'll look at it and address it or whatever, just to make them one thing. Was that to your understanding, was that an oversight in the contract language, or was it something that was bargained for specifically and for a reason?
See, I don't know that from the discussion last night, but I would assume, I went with the assumption that was language that was already in their contract. I don't see anyone asking to add that into a contract. I am actually a union member. I mean, I would think that would be one of the things. I would read my contract. I would go to the head of our union, our team, and I would say, this is language that should be removed. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I do agree with Councilor Gitchier that it's not good language. It doesn't look good at all. I mean, bereavement is bereavement. You have a family member lost. The language shouldn't be in there. So I definitely agree with him. I don't think it's necessarily the job for the city to bring that forward, that change. I think it's goodwill for them too. And I do, Tom Golden did say last night, we will look at having, side language about removing it. Please approve the contracts, and we will continue the discussion. But I'm not sure that who should have brought that forward.
Well, thank you.
We don't negotiate for the union.
So that was my follow-up. For whatever reason, that wasn't in the contract, and whether it was in the current negotiations or prior negotiations and was left out. But
I mean, maybe the focus was on the 9% and not on the language. I mean, that's,
So last night's city council meeting basically gave a concession away, albeit a very minor one, but it gave something away that a union and a group of employees had already said, yeah, we're okay with this contract.
Right.
They agreed to it.
Right.
They signed off
Yeah, the
on it. And you
negotiations
now
that-
you just negotiated against yourself very publicly on the
And the
city council floor
negotiations
last
I've
night.
been part of have always been, we kind of live and die by the contract, right? Like we don't take from the contract, we don't give from the contract. We kind of, everything is what we agreed to on that piece of paper, and they agreed to it, So it was kind of an interesting dialogue to have public conversation about negotiation points on the floor. So.
All right. And last but certainly not least, because we both have things to get to, and I told you I'd let you out of here by 7:30ish. Your motion last night on the online census. You want the form that's mailed out every year. And I know there are constantly problems with people just not returning it. You have to send second notices, and it's often not discovered that it wasn't filled out by the resident until they go to vote, and they're told, well, you're not registered. You didn't fill out the census. You want it done nice and easy. You want it to, hey, here's an online option for you to do it. Why do you think that'll be more effective than the piece of mail that actually comes to somebody's house? If they don't remember that giant piece of mail that's sitting there, you think they're going to remember to go online and fill out the census?
I think in this day and age, I do think, yes, that could be, an option. You have that piece of mail that sits there and sits there and sits there, and you don't mail it. If you're like me, I have to hunt down a stamp. I don't even mail anything anymore. All my bills are done online, so I literally have to go to my mother and say, can I have a stamp to mail this out, if she's over. So I do think if you got the census, you had no changes to make, like Cambridge. Cambridge says you cannot make changes. It has to be just that you're going on and confirming that everything's the same. So as long as you can do that, you can use the online form in the city of Cambridge. I would go on instantly. You just get it done. You take the census, you do it, and that's it. And I think what people need to realize too right now with Greg Pappas running the elections office, unfortunately,
For another 4 weeks or whatever it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And but he's got the office in a good place. If you do not send your census in, then you are inactive in the system. The census went out late, so you need to get it in and get it processed. I mean, and just like I said, you will be inactive if you don't return it. And I think having this tool just to make it an easy thing for people to do is just another service for residents.
Okay, so I was gonna question you even more on like how are you sure you're getting reliable and maybe not even fraudulent activity. You mentioned that Cambridge does it.
That's
and
correct.
are there other communities that do it? That
I don't know.
All right, but Cambridge is
so
one somebody does it and
does it.
And you also explained the safeguard they have is if you want to make changes, you have to do it either in person or mail, requiring a signature, etc. How do I know? Now I have to kind of look at my next census form and see, is there a special barcode or something on there? Is there an ID number that needs to be entered in so we know that, I'm not filling in your census
for
my home in Chelmsford?
Those were the logistics that Greg Pappas said that he had to reach out to Cambridge and find out how they're meeting the requirements of the Secretary of State. So, I mean, this isn't a done deal. I mean, but what I do know is that the third largest city is doing it. So, it's something that we can look at.
Yeah.
I know you were.
Anytime you try to make something Cambridge, I immediately just push back. But it makes sense. There is precedence, and it does kind of make sense. But I worry about, are you getting a legitimate form
but I mean,
that way?
Look what he's doing, though. I mean, Greg he's made it so that you do have to send it back, and if not, you are inactive. And then when you show up to vote, you have to show that you do live at the residence that you say you do. So, I mean, he's definitely put that safeguard in place that I don't think was always being followed.
Okay. Kim Scott, Lowell City Councilor. This is the most I've gotten out of you. Can we have this Kim Scott show up for debates and for future
I think she's here to stay now, so.
I like it. All right. Well, you're certainly going to get them buzzing after I post this podcast and the follow-up story.
Can't wait to see the social media posts about
Yes, it'll be great. Thank you for joining us, Kim. Be well. Thank all of, wrong camera. Thank all of you for joining us as well here on this Inside Lowell podcast. As we like to say, Inside Lowell. If Lowell is your home, this is your place. Till next time, be safe, everybody.